Hello everyone, welcome and selamat datang to this session where we'll be talking about Microsoft Compliance as Code initiative and how it can help financial services institution or FSI company in Malaysia. So now I will go ahead and introduce the Compliance as Code team. There are 4 of us and we have been working very closely on this initiative for the past couple of months. And now that the feature have finally went live in Azure Portal, we can't wait to show you what we have got today for you. So I'll go from left to right. My name is Chi Keong, or you can call me CK. I'm a cloud solution architect for Microsoft Malaysia, and I am currently focused on helping FSI companies in Malaysia in their Azure cloud adoption journey. And next on my right, with Joshua. So yeah, that's Joshua. He has 5 years of experience in Microsoft, and he was a software engineer in Azure Compute for 3 years in Microsoft HQ in Redmond, and he recently relocated from the States to Malaysia. And he's sort of like our bridge between the local team and the Azure engineering team. And then on Joshua, right, we have Faisal. So Faisal is a global cloud solution architect. He has helped a lot of FSI company in this region, the APAC region, moving their mission critical workload to Azure cloud. And next we have Josing, who is also a cloud solution architect for Microsoft Malaysia, and he is a Terraform expert. He focused on infrastructure as code. He has done a lot of migration for Fortune 500 companies using infrastructure as code to move their workload to Azure. So next, yeah, so a lot of people ask, like, what is compliance as code? So we will normally start with explaining RMIT, which is risk management in technology. So on year 2019, Bank Negara Malaysia have released this RMIT policy, where all financial organizations within Malaysia are required to implement the minimum prescribed standards in this policy. So the purpose of this policy, it was created to ensure Malaysia FSI company properly manage their cyber risk exposure by establishing the necessary risk frameworks, governance structure, policies, and procedures. And the RMIT policy covers 6 different domains. There are 4 technical domains and 2 non-technical domains. And in this session, we'll focus about the technical domain, which is number 1, technology risk management. Number 2, technology operation management. Number 3, cyber security management. And finally, technology audit. And in a nutshell, compliance as code is a programmatic approach for automating the implementation, validation, remediation, monitoring, and reporting of the required regulatory compliance standards for Bank Negara Malaysia. In this case, is the RMIT policy. And how do we achieve that in Azure? So let's say now you have mission critical workloads running on Azure. How do you achieve that? So there are several tools involved. The first one is Azure Policy. Is a tool from Azure that helps to enforce organizational standards and to assess compliance at scale. So we also have Defender for Cloud. It's a tool for security posture management and threat protection for workloads running in Azure, hybrid, or even other cloud platforms. And then we have Visual Studio Code, because we're talking about compliance as code. So Visual Studio Code is the code editor that we will use in our demo today. And then we also have GitHub, which is like the source code version control management tool. This is where we will show you the GitHub repository. And then finally, Terraform. So Terraform is an infrastructure as code tool that lets you define both cloud and on-prem resources in human-readable configuration files that you can version, reuse, and share. And then you can use then a consistent workflow to provision and manage all of your infrastructure throughout its life cycle. Okay, so that's me. And now let me turn the attention to to the demo, and I will start with Joshua first. So, yeah, could you tell us how this initiative looks like in our Azure portal, and can you run through with us about the feature?
Hey, thanks CK for the introduction and the question. Yeah, I'm happy to definitely demonstrate this in the portal. This is the Azure portal that I'm displaying. I'm currently logged in. And if we click on the policy page here, this is the single page where all your policy controls are assigned and defined. So right now we are on the overview tab. And as you can see here, we have overall status of your compliance state. And we give you an overall score of how compliant you are on Azure. And a few other tabs I want to highlight in this demo would be the assignment tab, which is how you would assign these initiatives to a certain scope. And the definitions tab, where you would define policies or even view the definitions of the built-in policies that are available on Azure. So if we click on the definition and we take a look at the definition type, first we select the initiative. So these initiatives are a group of policies that are grouped together to form an initiative. And for our RMIT, we would select the regulatory compliance category. So here you'll see a list of initiatives that are already predefined. If it's built in, it's predefined by Azure, by the team. And you can see there's one for Canada, there's one for UK, and finally, there's one for RMIT Malaysia. So we have 230 policies built in from Azure to focus on addressing RMIT Malaysia.
That's great, Joshua. Thanks for sharing this. But if we take a step back, starting from RMIT policy document and mapping, like how does it land here? Like what have been done on the mapping side? Could you walk us through on that part?
Yeah, for sure, CK. Yeah, let's take a step back and take a look at the actual document, Risk Management in Technology, RMIT. This document is the actual document published by Bank Negara. And if we click to, let's say, one of the sections that you mentioned, Technology Operations Management. And let's take an example here, say 10.16, cryptography. I'll just read it out. A financial institute must establish a robust and resilient cryptography policy to promote adoption of strong cryptographic controls for protection of important data information. And it goes on to describe that a bit more. So if we jump back into the policy, the Azure portal, and we go back to the policy overview page, I like to just click on this assignment that I've already done previously on the root management group scope. And I like to show you how this is mapped to what we've mentioned just now in the document. Yep. So if we do a filter here on 10.16, we can see cryptography is listed here, the one that was mentioned before. And you'll see the exact same description that I just read out from RMIT on our Azure portal. And if we click policies here, we'll be able to see the different policies that have been mapped to this particular control. We have 10 in total.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. Go ahead, please.
And to just dig a little deeper into these policies, we have a full documentation page where we would describe the details of each of these compliance controls on Azure. So for example, 10.16, we have the 10 listed here. And the example that we've taken, storage accounts, you have infrastructure encryption. There's a little bit more details described in the documentation. And above that, just want to highlight an important note. Basically what this says is This is a subset of what is required to be compliant. So we don't fully guarantee compliance with these policies, but it's definitely a good baseline for you to start. Yep, CK.
All right, great. That means, if I may to summarize, the mapping of RMIT policy to Azure policy is the whole mapping is available in our Azure documentation, which is the page that you are showing. Also, when you go to Azure portal, you can also find that same RMIT policy, and then you can see what are the different controls that's being implemented here. Okay, that's great. But how do we then go on and enable this? Let's say I have Azure subscription. I want to enable this. How do I do that?
Yep, for sure. Let me quickly jump back to the policy page and click on assignments. So this is how one would want to assign this initiative to a particular scope. And for RMIT, we would click assign initiative. And first, we would define a scope. So this scope can be as high as your root management group, or as granular as subscription, or even more granular than that, the resource group level. So for example, let's take a subscription, and we can even choose a particular resource group. So what this means is we are assigning this policy to be mapped to the scope that we define. No, not more than the outside that scope. And in the initiative definition, we would go ahead and look for RMIT Malaysia and select that. And we would leave the rest as default for now, and we'll click parameters. So this is actually a page I want to highlight for you, where we uncheck this box to actually show us all the parameters that are available for this policy initiative. Takes a second. So parameters are hugely important in assigning policies, and we have already predefined some defaults that are available where you can skip this process and go ahead and assign this. And we would maybe recommend this for assigning this to a POC environment or a dev environment. But for your production environment, it is very important to take a look at all these parameters and make sure that they are up to your compliance standards. So highlighting one of the parameters, for example, enforce the PHP version of app service is no later than specified. You can see that it's right now it's defined as 7.3. So if PHP does release a new version, we would actually need to make a change here once we are ready to move on to that version. So yeah, this is, if you go through the next steps, you would just go ahead and create this initiative and create this assignment, and then it will be applied to the scope that you have defined. And very quickly, I just want to show you how this would look like when it's running. Just jumping back to the overview page. Just very quickly. Jumping back to RMIT Malaysia. Yep, let's go back to 10.16. Back to policies. As you can see here, I have actually one resource that has been marked as non-compliant. So let's take a look at that and see what it is telling us. So this policy actually says storage accounts should have infrastructure encryption, and it actually tells you the exact resource that is being marked as non-compliant. So if you take an example here, I actually have opened this in another tab. You can see that this is a storage account in my environment. And in the properties here, let's take a look at encryption. We'll be able to find that infrastructure encryption is disabled. And if we hover over this icon, it would tell us what it's about and also how you would need to enable this. So if you click learn more, and I've clicked this on another tab, this would show you how to enable this in your storage account and to remediate that policy.
This is great, Joshua. So that means a customer can go to Azure portal, they can select RMIT from Azure Policy, and then they can enable it. They can also customize it based on the requirement. But another follow-up question, this is the last questions that I have for you, Joshua. So let's say I'm a customer, FSI customer now. I have deployed this in my environment, and I found that there are some certain improvement, certain mapping is not really according to my business rules and our environment. What should I do? How should I feedback to your team?
Yep. So definitely I can address that question. So on the policy page, there's actually an exemptions where you would be able to create exemptions for a particular policy or particular set of policies that does not fit your Azure environment. And this is where you would be able to define this exemption. And to feedback to our team, you can always reach out on our GitHub page and reach out to any of us here, and we'll be able to take this feedback, and we'll constantly be updating this policy to maintain the standard accordance to the RMIT document. For example, if there's any changes in a document that is relevant to Azure, we would definitely go ahead and make those changes so that it's available to every customer.
Thanks a lot, Joshua. And now that we have seen how easy it is to enable RMIT policy in Azure portal, and now we'll switch our attention to Joseng, who will be showing us how easy it is to build this into Azure Landing Zone to enable the Azure policy. So Joseng, could you take us through that?
Sure, thanks for the question. So before I go into the steps, I just want to briefly introduce what exactly is Enterprise Scale Landing Zone for all the viewers here. So essentially, Landing Zone is a foundational platform for your cloud environment. So think of it as if you are building a building, so you're gonna need foundations, and you should also have guardrails in order to keep your environment safe. So this is on a high level conceptual. That what Landing Zone is. Mainly to help you to govern. There are multiple pillars in this area. You have security, you have IAM, you have network, you have so much more, including like your data security and all that stuff, right? So that is the understanding of Landing Zone. Now let me go ahead to show you. Allow me to share my screen right now. Essentially to show you how it looks like. What is a compliance as a code? How does it look like on the coding level? Right, as you can see here, I'm already in my Visual Studio Code environment. So before I jump into talking about all these pieces, let me just again briefly introduce about this specific tool, right? So on the left side, you can actually see your files directory. This is where you can identify and locate all the files that you might have in this current directory. Whereas these two are your main screens to view your codes. And at the bottom, this is where your terminal at. And as for my case, I'm using a container, which is a Linux container. So how do I get started? Essentially, there are only 4 steps. So number 1, what you need is to have the code. So let me just bring up the GitHub repo to show you how it looks like. So as you can see here, this is, again, don't worry about it. We will share the link in the description later on below. So what you want to do is to go over here, make sure you grab the URL code. And then what you want to go is come back to your terminal here. You want to do a git clone. Paste the link here and just enter to download the whole repo. However, I'm not going to do that because I already have this code on my environment already. So let me just cancel that. Now, assuming I've already downloaded, and now you can see this directory over here, which is the regulatory compliance initiatives. I can go ahead into this directory. Make sure that I can check out the files over here as well. I can go inside the Terraform folder, come over here, and you can see there is a Landing Zone and also the spoke. However, for today's topic, we are mainly focusing on Landing Zone. So let me just go inside the Landing Zone itself. And you can see this is all my files listed over here. So these are the main configurations that I will be deploying. So now let me show you on the left side here where all the Terraform code is. Now I just want to explain a bit more on what are we going to deploy. So over here, when I click on here, I'm at my main.tf. So this is essentially the code that is going to deploy your infrastructure. Whereas there is a different section over here, which is the library. This contains the Azure policies, what you want to assign for your landing zone. Okay, now let me just go over the steps, and also perhaps let me just mention what will be deployed over here. So number one, you'll be deploying your management groups, the assignment of subscriptions to your management groups, assignment of Azure policies to management groups, and then you will also have monitoring resources for management, and you also have connectivity resources. So these are the few main components that you'll be deploying. Now, once we have this in place, now let me just refocus your attention back at the terminal at the bottom, at the landing zone here. So what I'll do, let me just clear it up. The first step you want to do to run your Terraform is Terraform. Sorry, before I go that, you actually need to log into your credentials. So that goes by AZ login. For my case, I'll be using a device code. Let it run. So what I want to do is copy this code, and then I want to come to my, click on this link to redirect myself to the page. Once you're at the page, you just need to paste the code over here, click next. Click on the account that you are going to sign in. Click continue. So once you reach this page, essentially now you can go back to your command line interface. Let me bring it back over here. So it takes some time to authenticate at the back end. And while waiting for that, I just want to mention there is also a prerequisites to this. So if you want to run this Terraform landing zone to deploy to your environment, you must make sure that the account that you're using is actually having the role of management group owner at the tenant level in your subscription. So once you've ensured you have that, now let me come back over here. So if you notice all these credentials that's already been in place, you notice that you have successfully authenticated yourself to your environment. Once that's ready, what you want to do is simply run Terraform init. So that would initialize your code. It will go through a check on all the credentials is ready, your files is okay, you don't have any errors pertaining the few required components to run this. Afterwards, what you want to do is run Terraform plan. And so Terraform plan essentially is going to give you perhaps like a dry run, a review on what is going to be deployed to your environment. So when that has been in place, after this is completely run, you will notice like what are the components to be deployed. On this portion, it will actually take a little bit of time. Again, this depends on your machine capability as well. So you can see everything is going through. It's checking the environment, making sure that what isn't there, and compare back to the state that you have currently. So mine would actually now look a bit different because I already applied this for it beforehand, because it will take some time to actually deploy it. But this is to give you an understanding and also how it looks like on a operational level for you. Just give you some time. I think I'll just fast forward this if it takes a bit too long here. So essentially, once you have all the plans ready, you can check whether or not there's any syntax error or anything that you might have missed. It will actually prompt you over here. Once that's done, you can run Terraform apply. Of course, there's also a quick tip on this one, because there's so many resources that's being applied. What you want to add in terms of your argument, this is an optional one. It's called parallelism. Essentially, it allows you to set beyond the default parallel deployment. In this case, you can actually set to 50, which is a decent parallel deployment. So in this whole process, it probably take about 15 to 20 minutes. Of course, I'm not going to run it now because I do already have it. So let me just show you how it would look like on the portal itself after you've run this. So once you have applied, this is how you would have it in your Azure portal. It's very similar to what Joshua has already shown you earlier. So you would have your tenant group. This is the one that you have deployed. This is the management group where you have all the deployed different management group as well. So essentially, this is also important for you to segregate your Azure policies to make sure that the specific ones is assigned to accordingly to each of these landing zones. So that is on the landing zone part. What about the resources? Remember, I was saying about network connectivity as well. So yes, that can also be deployed. So if you come back to your resource group, if you notice there's a new resource group being created, my bank connectivity Southeast Asia. So as you can see, you will have your firewall, you have your VPN, and your network hub all deployed readily for you. So that, in summary, is to show you the few simple steps. Let me just recap that. Number one, just go to the GitHub repo, do a git clone. Of course, you need to make sure you have Terraform installed. And then you need to go inside your terminal, locate yourself to the Terraform folder, run Terraform init, Terraform plan, and Terraform apply. And finally, you just need to come to your portal and verify the resources that has been deployed.
Very cool. Thanks a lot, Josing. I think you just show us how to actually integrate the whole deployment of and enabling this Azure policy and tying it to Azure Enterprise Scale Landing Zone. That's really impressive. And I have another question for you. Like, okay, you have shown us the quick start. I think it's great. I definitely can do this in my environment as well. But how do I customize this deployment? Let's say I have different settings, I have different resources that I want to include. How do I change that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I believe most of us will actually need to configure to some extent, including simple things like names, right? Let me just go through here, come back here again, focus your attention to this file. So just as a reminder, if you want to come back here, it's actually under your Terraform folder in the whole structure, right? So coming over here, click on Landing Zone, click on main.tf. That is where you can locate this file. So again, I mentioned a bit earlier, there are a few things that you can actually deploy and customize. So number one, what you want to probably customize is the name of the management group, right? And especially at the root level. So let me show you how it looks like at the configuration level. So over here, this is your first portion that defines your management group at the root level. Again, let me just reference that because this is pointing to a variable. I'll just bring up a screen on the right here. So if you notice, this is the same root ID and root name. So this is where you can actually customize your management group ID and also the display name itself. That is for the root management group name. Yeah. The second portion is your management resources. Now here this is also an optional choice whether or not you want to deploy. So let me direct your attention towards this specific variable. Deploy management resources, which is over here. So as of this point, I set it to true. But what about the configuration? What exactly is it trying to deploy? Here's where I want to direct your attention towards a file on the left side in the same folder. You see that settings.management.tf, which I already opened over here. As you can see, these are the list of configuration that you can actually set and customize. For example, you can actually choose whether or not you want to deploy a log analytics or enabling your security center. And besides that, you can also go into much more granular settings. For example, are you going to enable monitoring for your VM, VMSS? These are all the options that you can choose from. So just simply set the true or false if you want true to enable it and false to not enable it. Similarly, that goes the same for your security center as well. So another configuration that I want to point out is the location and tags. So you might have your own choice on choosing the location of your data center and resources to be deployed. You can set the location to Southeast Asia or East Asia as per your requirements, and also the taggings that your company might require. So that is the second piece. The third one is your connectivity resources in a very similar structure. So let me just bring your attention back to the variable here, which is deploy connectivity resources, which is here. So now this is also set to true. But as for the configuration, similarly, you go to the left panel, locate the settings.connectivity.tf. You would come to this specific file. And on the right, here is where you can define your hub network. So essentially, this depends on how many regions you're trying to serve. So over here, you can actually see there's two sections here, but I'm going to focus your attention to one. So let's say, for example, on the first configuration here, you do not need to deploy to East Asia. You just simply set to false, and this whole block will not be in use. So let me just focus on a single one. Let's say, for example, I want my hub to deploy here, and this is set to Southeast Asia. So this is where you define all your CIDR range. Are you going to use a DDoS plan? What virtual network gateway are you going to use, what IP, what address prefix, SKU, things like that. That including your Azure firewall as well. Now moving at the lower portion, you can see here there's a DDoS protection plan. So if you have any intentions to enable this and link it to your hubs, you need to make sure that this is set to true. And then moving down, this is all your DNS. So this is the DNS zone that you can domains that you can actually enable. So there's a whole list of your resources. As of this point, by default, it's just setting all to true. So again, at the very bottom here, you have your locations and tags for you to actually enable them. So again, let me just quickly recap. I've gone through quite a few things. So the first portion, this is your management group root ID and name. This is your management resources. This is your connectivity resources. And over here, now we're moving towards a bit deeper to your management group's hierarchy. So over here, you can, again, these are some of the optional ones that if you want to follow the recommended or the reference architecture, so you can have your corp landing zones or online landing zones. So before I go further, let me just show you how that looks like in the portal itself. So I just want to go back to management groups. So let's say you have already enabled the two optional ones, you would be able to see it over under your landing zones. So as you can see, I have a corp and also an online. So these are the two things that's getting deployed from these specific ones. Now, with that said, right, what if you need customized landing zones? You need different names, you need different structure and levels and all of that. That is where the custom landing zone parameter comes in. So this is where you can define. You can define as many as Azure allows you to. So you would have, let's say, for example, I want a production, pre-production, non-production, all these different custom landing zones. Again, you can actually see it back in here. So you can see the non-prod, pre-prod, and production. All of that stuff is up to you to decide. Whereas where you want to park them under, it's under this specific parameter here, which is your parent management group ID. So you can define where you want to slot them in. Okay, and last but not least, which is the Azure Policy assignment, that comes to this archetype config. You can see the archetype ID here. So where is this trying to point to? What key exactly is this? Well, this is obviously a default empty one. Let's say in some cases you want to have a custom one, you can actually come back over here. Imagine under the lib, you can notice you have a archetype definition. So imagine you have a file here. At this point, this is pointing to the root one. If you have different ones that you might want to assign different policies or different set of definitions, you want to create a new file, rename this key here. You can, that's just assuming test 1, 2, 3, right? And then with that, you want to make sure that you are typing here test 1, 2, 3, such that it knows which archetype definition it's trying to look for. And that's how you can assign a custom policy towards your management group. Now, before I move on, I just want to mention that this whole parameter here, the custom landing zone, is really truly to your discretion on how you want to name them. So Microsoft, by all means, do not recommend this naming conventions. It's really up to you how you want to define it and how many structures you want to add. And this is just an example to show you how you can do it. Yeah. And yeah, CK. So I think this is what I want to conclude, and these are all the customization that you can do. I hope that's enough for our viewers to use.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Josing. Yeah, you have gone through very details into how you actually turn your entire enterprise scale landing zone into a Terraform script, and then you can check in this source code into your source code repository. You can use it in your Azure deployment lifecycle. Okay, great. So now let's turn our attention to Faisal. So Faisal, so Josing and Joshua have shown us how you can deploy your workloads in Azure using the CaC landing zone, and then also how to turn on the Azure policy. Then now next question is that I have for you is how do we then use this tool to continuously monitor the compliance status for RMIT? Could you walk us through that?
Yeah, sure, CK. Before we do, right, I also want to share where do you find that information so far, whatever we have spoken, right? That's one of the piece that I think is important as well. So let me go through, and also I will also go through the technical piece of it. Let me share my screen here. Okay, so one of the thing is actually what you are asked me, or how do I actually going to do a continuous monitoring? Continuous actually is scaling of sorry, monitoring the entire solutions and over here, right? The management group just now what Josing is deployed, you have seen that. Now I'm going to one of the great feature called Microsoft Defender for Cloud. This is the one of the security posture tool that we have, where you can able to see as a single pane of glass for every security things that are happening under your resources, right? So the one of the thing is what we did actually, we built this regulatory compliance dashboard for various regulated policies. So like for example, ISO, PCDCS, SOC type 1, we have been already pre-built for you. There is one more thing, what we call Azure Security Benchmark, right? This Azure Security Benchmarks actually is inherited from the various standards like NIST, ISO, PCDCS, and SOC type. So all of them grouped here, right? So you can see that there is actually a resources actually grouped, and you can see whether it's a comply or not. So we take this, approach, and then we're trying to see how do we actually group this into Malaysia RMIT initiative that actually Josing and Joshua was showing. Joshua was very clearly demonstrating how the Azure policies actually is there. How do you can see the compliance or non-compliance, everything, right? Let's say if we give the same thing in the dashboard point of view, one of them is actually, if I group them into the same way is actually RMIT is asking, then I can show all the element of the policies and everything. For example, cryptography here, and then all the thing is actually you can able to see which resources comply, which resources not comply, right? So this would be very cool for especially security folks in the organization, so that they can able to see any point in time, any resources comes on board, they can able to see the result, and they will be able to continually to monitor this, right? So another thing is actually is the whole monitoring is actually happening here. The thing is actually is you are deploying into a development environment, or actually could be a production environment. So but when you look at this as actually is you can see the entire thing, whether my subscription level or actually resource level is a resource comply or not, you can able to see very clearly. The other thing is actually is sometimes you have a situation where you want to do an exemption of certain things. So the Azure Defender actually a built-in native feature called exemption, which allow you to exempt the entire subscription from the your monitoring perspective. For example, you are just putting in a development subscription, engineering subscription. You don't want the scorecard to be appear very low when your management sees, right? You want to create exemption, you can create very easily the specific subscription at the exemption, or you can also specify certain resources that you want to provide an exemption, right? The other thing is actually is sometimes in the production environment, due to the business requirement or business scenario, you are maybe providing a risk approval for specific period, because the cloud service provider may be working on the specific feature is going to release in 3 months time, but you are okay to accept the risk for the 3 months time to go and do it, right? How do I do this kind of risk exception? So he can specify the date and put the date and time, and by the time it will actually able to come back and tell you that this resource not comply. Then other thing is actually you are enterprise environment. In our enterprise environment, basically you may have a third-party tool which already helps you to mitigate this problem outside of this entire system, right? In that case, you can actually exemption category. Then you can select that I have been exempted for this because I am already done this mitigation using the third-party tool. So this will help you to answer your auditor when tomorrow when auditor comes in. It's become very handy for you to show the evidence and show the proof that yes, we know we have been third-party tool. This is the tool that is actually helping you. You can put in a remark. Sometimes, due to the various business circumstances, we need to accept certain risk. We will give the waiver for those risks, right? In that situation, you can also specify those details here. So this is one of the coolest things that you can see. Everything is recorded and stored in one single place. The other thing is, cool thing is actually here is, compliance overtime run book, the workbook, right? This compliance overtime workbooks help you to monitor. Today there was a resources actually is able to get it, but the resource actually is what happened is actually is comply, but next day it became a non-comply. What makes this entire thing to be comply? What makes this entire thing to be non-comply, right? That's very important piece that we need to look into. So you can select this report and it tell you that why this specific item is become comply or non-comply. You can drill down, you can able to find because of specific action, this become a non-comply, right? Then also it's give you the compliance posture, the controls, how many levels that are actually passing score that you have for the based on regulatory compliance. By looking at this, that you can see that my entire subscription is not meeting the standard. So I can go and tighten up this entire process and actually help you to get the better score, right? So this is one of the way that you can able to continually monitor and able to, improve your security posture for your organization. So the assignment of this entire item, there are two ways, but one way is actually already Joshua is shown. The other way is actually is using the script. How you can enable the Azure policies also shown by Jorsing. This is another way of implementing it. But what we did, we made it simplify. You go to your environment, environment in your Defender, then you can go and click Add Standards. Because Malaysia already added, it is here. Otherwise, what happened is Malaysia will be looking actually another item here. Then it click add. Then when you click add the specific one, you can specify the scope. How just now Joshua is selected. You can able to specify this entire compliance scope at the management group level or the landing zone level or the subscription level or actually even resource level. The same screen, there is no deviation or the difference from there, right? Once you apply, this will appear in this place. Then you can keep it whether it's add or delete, but this dashboard won't appear immediately after you created. It takes few hours to appear in your the regulatory dashboard as a tab. Once it's appear, you can able to drill down into the specific areas. Okay, so this one of the thing is actually is handy for everyone, every organization, the security team to look at all the features and everything. What we also are working on is actually is there. We are also integrating with other cloud provider like AWS and GCP. You can also integrate your other accounts here. Then we will also able to tell you the security posture of those items as well. This has nothing to do with the compliance as a code, but just the reason I'm explaining here is this is actually become a single pane of glass for your organization to see your entire cloud security posture for your entire Azure or other cloud service provider environment. This become a very good tool for the security team to look at, or even engineering team or the development team to look at it. Okay, so that's one of the piece that I want to share, CK. The other one is, as I mentioned to you previously, the information that we are talking about here, right? So far, whatever is spoken by Jorsing or actually CK and Joshua, some of the thing is actually what we did. We actually documented entire item here. Okay, this is our GitHub repo, Azure Regulatory Compliance Initiative. In this repo that you can see is that actually Malaysia RMIT Regulatory Compliance and also Landing Zone. We have given the background of why what is actually this is, what we are complying, the document of the bank NIHRA, and also which class of the cloud framework that we are complying, right? Then we also put across the business challenge that is actually is the customer is looking after. Then we also explain the reason for the RMIT as a compliance as a code here. We explain what it means to you and how it's going to help. One of the things is actually we are actually making sure that not just only deploying a governance policies, we are also making sure that you are continually monitoring compliance over time so that you can able to improve your score overall. Then we also building the compliance as a code so that you can able to maintain the security and infrastructure compliance with your business goal. Okay, then we also ensure that the script are actually is become as the landing zone so that you can able to deploy faster and automatically build the management controls like such as network monitoring, virtual net design, log maintenance, network segmentation, security. All this actually is pre-built for you based on the standards so that you can easily consume and be very fast. You can start your journey in Azure or actually you can continue tighten up your journey within the Azure. The benefits are actually very clearly we have given. Then the goal of this entire initiative that we already clearly defined. One more thing I want to bring a point here is approval. So as per our understanding is actually RMIT is required to get approval of the financial institute to consume the cloud service provider. So what we have been given the document link where the customer need to get the approval from the respective regulators. Okay, so those actually documented how to get the approval. Everything is documented in the navigating path to cloud to Malaysia. If any queries on this area, please feel free to reach us so we can connect with the respective folks within our organization. They will be able to help you. So the entire Terraform is documented here. In case if you want to follow through, you can follow through this. This is what Josing is run through the whole thing, the customization part and all the areas that we have been documented here. Okay, and if you are actually looking into enabling of the RMIT correctly compliant, also documented the step-by-step approach so that you can able to walk through this document and able to enable it. Later on, if you want to remove the standard from the your dashboard, also there is an option for you to remove. And most of the cases, what we have seen that whatever regulatory compliance or actually is the other compliant, customers still want to develop their own custom controls. They may have additional custom control. So you can also build as a policies and you can able to integrate with this. There is a step that how we can able to do, how we can automate also is given using this link. Please feel free to visit all this information and do let us know any feedback or any information that required. I hope that would be a great place for us to collaborate and contribute and continually improve this initiative. CK, I hope this is that what I have given is sufficient. Is there anything that else I can happy to provide additional information?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Faisal. This is a great summary. You cover about the Microsoft Defender for Cloud and also this GitHub page, which is like a sort of like a one-stop center where you find all the information here. So we will provide all this link in the YouTube video. Just one last question, Faisal. In the previous screen where you show Microsoft Defender for Cloud, I noticed that there's a button that you can download policy report under regulatory compliance. Yeah, just one. Could you walk us through a little bit about that?
Definitely. So the download report is the categorization that we have here. It will actually help you to download the report of the overall thing. Which report you want? You want to go for RMIT, whether you want a CSV or a PDF, you can download as a file. Then it will categorize the same thing that what you've seen in the page, right? It will give you that file. And it actually is, help you to provide this information to your auditor or anyone who want to consume this, right? It's a good, easy way to increase our things. So which compliance that this belongs to, which are the subscription that is applied to, and what does this mean, and which categories, how much we have complied. And all this actually is very well documented and easy to use. Each controls what resources that we have been, done. For example, this resource network resilience point of view, we have 4 resources failed, 24 resources pass, right? This is a great insight for you to look at and able to go and mitigate and quickly react to the situation, right? This is a really good thing. Thanks for asking this, CK.
Great. This is really a great one last question that I asked you, that you showed this report, which I think will be very useful because the IT team in any FSI company, they will actually need to produce reports from time to time. They need to submit to Bank Negara. So this, I believe, will be very useful for them as well.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. I think we have shown a lot about the compliance as code initiative from Microsoft. So all the details that whatever we have presented, you will be able to find it in the YouTube link, the video link. And yeah, thanks for your time spending with us watching this video. I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any question, feel free to reach out to us. Contact is also in the description. And yeah, that's all from us today. And take care. Have a nice day.
Take care. See you.
Bye.